What do you got going on, man?
Yeah, well, for me, I am still in the wrestling world mainly because if I guess we talked briefly, I started the Lehman University thing when my wife and I were living in San Diego for a little bit. And that's kind of where I started the landmine university business. And then when she got pregnant, we ran home to Iowa City.
You
And
ran home.
which was I'm lucky because my stuff is mostly virtual and then like a little bit of traveling, when it comes to that. And for my day to day, I ended up, as soon as I got back in town, talking to Dylan Carew, who's an old buddy of mine that went to high school together, and he brought me over to Big Game Wrestling Club, and I have been hanging out there now for the last 3 years, just running strength and conditioning for his guys in the morning, and then using the facility to do my own landmine stuff, and yeah, it's really cool. It's like we talked about. It's such a tight knit community that like as soon as I got back in town, uh, that was like wrestling was like the sort of it's like it wasn't a bunch of football guys reaching out to you know what I mean? It's just
Hmm.
it's a different animal. So yeah, I'm out at Big Game Wrestling Club every morning, working with all age groups there, and then running a couple toddler wrestling classes because my oldest is 3 now, and so yeah, I'm still in the wrestling world, um and I developed the landmine stuff, and it's kind of become popular
Yeah.
with wrestlers. Like I just messaging with RBY and meeting with him on Monday to give him a refresher, and so that's been really cool. When I was in San Diego, I had a chance to work with Burroughs. I was at a company called Weck Method, and we got to work with Jordan and just kind of show him some alternative, training methods or whatnot. And he was kind enough to let me like use clips of that to run some ads, and I think that kind of turned into making it, if nothing else, feel like a wrestling thing. But yeah, so I don't know. That's where I'm at right now.
So with Landmine University, you don't, it's not strictly
No.
wrestlers. Like you, okay, yeah, it can be anybody, it can be any athlete is like,
Yeah, for sure. I
okay.
mean, I mean, like the thing for me, that was sort of like the red pill moment is this concept of the spinal engine theory, which is like, without getting too in the weeds on any scientific stuff, the idea that your spine rotates and bends as part of locomotion. So, like the way that I had been taught, movement or running mechanics was just constantly brace your core neutral and try to stay square and neutral in your spine. And we would do, when I was playing football at Iowa, we would do drills where you're trying not to move your spine at all and then swing your arms, and that's just not how the body works. Now, when I got kind of exposed to like the actual rotational pattern that you run with your trunk when you locomote, or when you walk, I was like, damn, why have I never been exposed to this before? And I think the wrestling background helps me in that uh, there's just so much rotation involved. There's so much core strength outside of trying to stay still with your core, right? Like you have to be able to bend your spine and to rotate and to do all these things. So what the landmine really for me is about is taking everything I love about traditional Olympic weightlifting and then
Mhm.
trying to kind of layer some of these rotational patterns and some of this like core driven stuff where now I am rotating my spine, I am side bending, I'm doing those things together as a way to produce force, instead of just constantly being stuck in the middle.
Mhm.
So, and I mean, I apologize if I ramble, but when I was in San Diego and sort of getting into this stuff, there was just a real sort of like, it was a totally different thing for me, different type of trainer, different type of coach. I had
Yeah.
interned with Coach Doyle at Iowa. I am a traditional meathead weightlifting guy. Like I love it all. And all of a sudden now, that when I want to learn more about this type of, movement philosophy, I'm all of a sudden surrounded by, the barefoot man bun, different type of dude, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
I love everything that they were doing, but they weren't really lifting weights. And so the landmine thing for me kind of came as a the best way to sort of marry those two things. I
Yeah,
really like some of the stuff they're doing. I love swinging clubs around and all that stuff. But, I think at some point, especially for athletes, you have to be able to set personal records and put numbers behind it and like lift some
right,
weights. And so it's just, the best tool for it. There's also like the side of things that I was in California and I felt like every personal trainer had six kettlebell certifications and whatever, but no one was doing anything with the landmine. So I thought, you know what, this seems like a pretty good idea to turn this into a system that I can share. And yeah, that's been sort of like my obsession for the last 5 years, which
Where
has
did where did that come from, that obsession? Like, was this something you were doing in school? Like, did you graduate with a degree in like PT or something? I don't know. Like, where
so
did
yeah. So when I played football at the University of Iowa my true freshman sophomore year. Ran into a pretty catastrophic injury that forced me to take a step back, and right away I knew that I wanted to be in the weight room. And I think a lot of
okay.
that was just kind of for me, outside of Mark Ryland, rest in peace, the closest relationships that I'd had with, adult men was in the weight room. And I think part of that is like, you go through college football and the football part is so high stakes and so like intense and some of the time in the weight room is really like just a great time to kind of socialize and to learn how to act and to like I just had people that really impacted me heavily in the weight room. On top of that, I always loved it. Like I always loved lifting weights. And so I knew I wanted to be in the weight room. As soon as I got done playing, I interned with Coach Doyle there. And the main issue, and this was something that he brought up to me, through observation, which I'm very grateful for, was that it was really difficult for me to go from being teammates and buddies with these guys that were like the same age as me to all of a sudden telling them that they're not getting low enough on their squats, right? So like as soon as I could get out of that environment, I did, and I started working at Iowa City Regina, which is a Catholic school in town, and taking over their weight room and coaching football. We had an unbelievable staff. Marv Cook was the head coach. We had all former Hawkeyes, Ed Hinkle, and we ended up winning six straight state football championships. And I felt like uh, I was also head wrestling coach a little bit, coached a couple state champs there, and then got kind of an itch right around your early 30s, which I think happens to guys, and I felt like I needed to be doing something different. And that sort of started this like quest. But throughout that entire time, I liked the landmine as a tool just because it was like pretty low barrier of entry. Like you could get kids to do an explosive movement on it pretty quick. And if you're looking for just like, explosive triple extension, you can get there real fast with the landmine. I like the angle. And so I'd always used it a little bit. But like I said, when I got into the guy that really sort of set me down this path, his name is David Weck, and he invented the Bosu ball. So that's the like half blue stability ball.
Hmm.
He invented that product, became a millionaire, became obsessed with biomechanics, on like another level. And he was actually the first one. I went to San Diego and took his class. He put me in a couple of like positions and stances where I felt like a contraction in my lat and oblique that I just had never felt. Like I
Hmm.
didn't I felt like wow, this is really powerful, and it feels like a hard pummel or like the connections to wrestling are like situations in football playing on the line that really I was like, man, this feels right. This feels like something that I need to be hitting these positions and these patterns. And there's nothing I'm doing right now where I'm doing anything with my spine besides bracing it in neutral. Outside of maybe like you throw a med ball against the wall, or you try to mix in these like sort of low stim rotational movements. And my one argument with him was like, yeah, we can get in these deep ranges, but you know, we do need to at some point load it or find a way to create a stimulus so that I know that I'm measurably powerful more stronger in those positions or in those patterns. And the landmine just became the best tool to do that, for a lot of reasons. And so and I was working with athletes. I was using the system. I was helping him teach his continued education classes. And then, like 3 months after I moved there, COVID hit. And it
Mhm.
was like obviously the worst time to be in Southern California. Also, the worst time to be on the other side of the country from where I grew up. Um, but it left me with like all of a sudden a bunch of free time, me and everybody else. But I
Mhm.
didn't handle that very well. Like for me, it was really sort of like a difficult thing to have that much alone time. And I started filming these videos and I started talking about the progressions that I use with my athletes and the way that teach these movements in this system. And sometimes I spent all day filming stuff and looked myself in the mirror and was like, dude, you're losing your mind. Like, I don't even know why I'm doing this, right? But somehow I lucked out and like the right couple of people took the class and helped me build a couple of relationships. I have learned how to operate the social media hemisphere a little bit, which has been a necessary evil, not something I ever thought that I'd be
Mhm.
doing every single day, but that has like become quite a big part of the job actually. So yeah, and I'm really grateful for all of it. I'm really lucky. I think, my everything I've done has been just stealing or learning things from other people, and then um, being lucky enough to know someone that's important enough to give me some type of credibility. And at this point, I have no complaints. I'm really enjoying it. So
Yeah, there's a lot to kind of unpack there,
yeah, too much. And
Well,
I
when did
ramble
you?
on these things.
No,
So
you're good because like everything you said was something that I was going to touch on or felt like I wanted to anyway. So this is good. Um, how like when did you moved out to San Diego? When?
in like January 2020, like
Really? Okay.
this is a very limited amount of time that I got to enjoy San Diego. And
Right.
I mean, and people are like, oh, and you tell people are like, oh, Southern California, like, man, I don't know how you do that. But then you say San Diego and they say, oh, I love San Diego, and it's like we were kind
Yeah.
of lucky. It is a conservative pocket. There's a lot of military there. I didn't feel like I was in LA, but at the same time,
Mhm.
I'd come back home and like there's live music, and I'm like, man, what are we doing, dude? This is so rough. So, and it felt like it was never going to end. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was 2020, and by the end of 2020, I had sort of started this thing, um, and yeah, it's been like such a fast 5 years, but that feels like yesterday.
I was gonna say you've only been doing it for 5 years. Like,
Well, that's yeah, or my God, I've been doing this for 5 years, right? It depends on the angle you look at it from, but yeah, for sure.
yeah.
You
So
never know
what?
how long things like this are going to last, I think.
True, true. What exactly is Landmine University? Like, was
Yeah,
it something before, and you just kind of got into it, or did you create Landmine
I
University?
created it.
Okay, why is it called Landmine University?
I thought it was a cool name, and I thought that I don't know. Sometimes I think back at it, I think would there be a better thing to call it? Sometimes it's confusing, I think, to people. Like I will get every once in a while the message on Instagram about like the admissions process, and I'm like, oh, this is not. But it was just sort of
Mhm.
implying that this is like an education
Correct, yeah.
platform, which it is. It is continued education. Like strength coaches can get their CEUs, but I liked the LMU name. It's really it's hard to even say. I was just like, I don't know. That's what I called it.
Okay, yeah.
It stuck. So, and then I did the little logo. I thought I always really liked the Jordan logo, so I kind of tried
Yep.
to copy that as much as I could with what we
Yeah.
were doing with the landmine. And it's just crazy to me that like it's still, I don't know, people will wear it on a t-shirt or whatever. That's pretty cool to me. So um
Yeah.
but yeah, I created it, and really like I try to give as much credit as possible, like to David Weck and all these other people because in my opinion, what this really was like me taking some really important and complex ideas and putting them into a really digestible and simple like method that like you don't have to be really into this stuff or want to read the spinal engine theory textbook. You can do this progression, this series of movements, and you will have like a new tool, for your strength training. And essentially, like what it is, if you really look at the main concept, it's an alternative to the Olympic lifts. So, sort of like the last step or the finish line is this rotational clean, rotational jerk, and rotational snatch. So instead of just staying square during the clean, I do it in a unilateral way with one arm where I'm rotating into it. Instead of just doing a jerk, I can layer now like a rotational punch mechanic into it. And same like with the snatch. So when you see this stuff online, that's mostly what you're seeing is explosive lifts, cleans, jerk snatches, which I
Mhm.
always appreciated but was never good at. It wasn't something that I grew up doing. So like this is like a combination of different issues that I had. When I was in college, we would do heavy cleans. I think this is a really common, I know it's common because I've had these conversations over and over, but as an athlete, you'll go to the college football weight room and cleans are going to be the go-to for, measuring explosive strength, explosive triple extension. The issue I always had was that I was over here doing something totally different than what this guy who grew up in high school with the coach who taught him how to do cleans is doing because he looks smooth and great and whatever. And I am not doing that. My legs are going out to the side. I can't get my elbows through. And I'm still, for some reason, loading 400 pounds on this and using this as a measuring stick. We're not doing the same exercise. So that was always kind of, and I got deep into Olympic weightlifting with my athletes. And I think if it's taught the right way, or if you're patient enough as a coach, it's a beautiful system as well. So I always I wanted to be that guy. Like I really wanted to be that guy that was nailing the snatches and the cleans and looking smooth doing it. But I felt like it was kind of a high barrier of entry, and I also felt like we were lacking consistency just as an overall program. So that's another bird I was trying to kill with this stone was that like, hey, if you don't want to get into that and spend half of your session every time teaching your kids how to do cleans, here's a clean that there's triple extension. The bar speed is very similar. You can load it up the same way, but the positions are a little bit more natural, and the ability to kind of rotate into a catch, it just makes it easier for people to learn usually. So. There's that side of it too.
Are there less injuries with this type of technique that you teach versus like the clean, the jerk, the snatch? Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So the whole thing was sort of designed to be taught.
Okay.
And there's really kind of two types of movement that are within this library. One of them I would call a coiled exercise. So if you can think of any like lift that you've done where you're trying to keep your core braced in neutral and like you
Yeah.
don't want to rotate at all. What we've done is we've put ourselves into as much rotation as possible and try to set that as our base posture. So it's like for a landmine deadlift, we will try to maintain a short side and a long side. I'll try to really contract one lat and oblique and stay rotated as I lift the bar. Then that will set me up to express with rotation. So like
Mm.
I teach a coiled deadlift, a coiled lunge, and then we add rotation to those movements. And the building, and this is, not unlike traditional Olympic lifts where you would learn your pull from the floor, you'd learn your front squat, you'd split it into segments, and those segment drills are also awesome assistance exercises. So like those are also great lifts in and of themselves. A lot of people take the class and they end up doing a lot of landmine deadlifts and presses, and maybe it's not all cleans, jerks, and snatches, but the movements that we use to teach it are also great movements in and of themselves. And I
Mm.
think for a lot of people, the big light bulb comes when they start doing some of the coiled training, which is not like totally groundbreaking new. It's just something that maybe hasn't been introduced to them as intentionally as we're gonna do it, which is like, okay, how far can you rotate, and can you hold on to that posture and produce force? Um, and then if you can, then can you take that all the way to the other side? And that's kind of, if I'm making any sense, that's
Hmm.
that's the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. So real quick, is that you in the logo? Did someone like, is that you
Yeah,
doing? That's
I
you?
I did it on like my Google Draw app, and I've never updated it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like I connected the dots around a picture, and someone
Nice.
figured
Okay.
out how to do it. And then this one, the it's actually, like I said, I don't know how I've lucked out the way that I have, but it became really popular thanks to social media in South Korea, and that was
Really?
the first place where I was able to say, "Wow, this is, if promoted the right way, this could be, my career." And they love everything American. And they saw this like stretch that we do on the wall, which is like a way that we sort of set people up and teach them how to coil their core. And they said, "Oh, that looks like the Lady Liberty." And they came back with this like incredible Statue of Liberty
Wow.
logo. And I'm like, that's cool. That's crazy that came from Korea. But that's um yeah, so there's other, iterations of it, but I try to stick with the OG one as much as possible because I still remember tracing it out, and it's just a funny thing.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
Man. And to think, I mean, you started when did you start lifting weights actually like?
Well, it's so for me, um I started lifting weights as soon as I could. And like for me that meant, sneaking into the field house and I was, I think part a lot of guys probably my age just like culturally it was I was really into pro wrestling. I was really into Hulk Hogan. I was really into
Yeah.
every
Goldberg.
Stallone and Van Damme movie ever. And like, what I really want to do is make my arms bigger. So that was like the first thing, was just like, I gotta get some dumbbells so I can do some
Yeah.
curls. And I've
Yep.
never lost that, passion for that either. I love pumping iron and everything that is traditional old school weightlifting culture. I didn't have a ton of guidance, and that's something that I sort of reflect on from time to time, especially now that I have my own boys. And like, my 3.5-year-old, I love to like bring him down to the basement and like, whatever, just whatever you want to do, but work out. Uh,
Hmm.
But I reflect back and I think that like for myself, and it's the same with wrestling, football, everything. But I was never really pushed into anything. It was all self-guided, and like this is all I was just begging to do this, and I think that is powerful. So like, you have your own kids, and it's like you want to take them to all this stuff, and you forget that like, how it felt. I remember with the buddies who had the dad who was like front row every single uh pressure, 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 right? And that
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily like the best thing for them. It was a big advantage for me. I think about that from time to time. It was all like stuff that I wanted to do. And in high school, um, we didn't have, a great weightlifting program. I mean, we had stuff, there was somebody opening the weight room after school or whatever. But I remember a lot of it being pretty self-guided.
Yeah.
And, similar to, I think anything, when it's you and you want to do it, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Um, and I was always also just, I was big. I grew fast. I was good at it right away. It was like part of my identity. Like, oh, that's the big strong kid. So like, I want to keep that going, right? So that was
Yeah.
part of it, I think, as well. Um, but yeah, I started early, but it's one of those things. It's like I I committed to Iowa um, my sophomore year of high school.
I
So
saw that. That's early.
yeah, I mean, I actually, the summer after my freshman year went to Iowa football camp and snuck into the and I saw and this is all was like part of my dream. Like I grew up a block from the stadium. I needed to play football at Iowa. That was like I that was my career, right? That's what I want to be when I grow up. Well, having no
Mhm.
idea that like well nowadays that could be, I guess, but
Yeah.
back then it was like that's not a real job. I didn't know that.
Mhm. Right.
Um, but but I went to a football camp the summer after my freshman year. I had never played varsity football, but I saw the coaches giving a lot of attention to a couple of guys like in that tight end group that I felt like, I think I could take that kid. So I would, I went to the camp and I snuck myself into the older group and I got myself in line behind the guy that everyone seemed to be into. And I went full bore, like my life was on the line at him. And, uh, then all of a sudden, my sophomore year, the first recruiting letter I ever got was a full scholarship offer. And I just right away
Wow.
was like, absolutely, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I committed right away. Um, and then, so this is now like my entire high school. This is me. I'm a athlete, weightlifter guy, whatever.
Mhm.
I didn't do like a real squat until I got to college, right? We talked about I didn't really do clean. Like there's things that looking back, I'm like, and I think also they have the insight to know that like we didn't recruit you because you're a great weightlifter. We don't need you to be like a great weightlifter these next 3 years.
Right.
So like we'll teach you how to lift when you get to college. And I graduated high school. I probably weighed like 250. I went through one summer of like heavy squats and things that I just hadn't done. And I
Mhm.
ended up playing my true freshman year and I was like 275. I gained like 25 pounds of like just ass because I hadn't really done, I was doing curls all the time and that was just seeing how much I could bench and I think there's beauty to that too, but it's been really that was like I considered myself obsessed with strength and conditioning, but knew nothing about it until college,
Mhm.
and I think that's a pretty common story. And it's funny to me now because like the kids that I work with are anywhere from 9 years old to 18. So I try to remember, what is important and what the balance needs to be and try to at least because there were things about what I was doing in the basement that I just loved and that I still do. So I want to make sure that, I expose them to that as well. But sometimes that's surprising to people because what's presented maybe online is this idea that like everything is uber scientific and optimal and which I think is also great. But so yeah, I've been into it for a really long time, and I think that the fact that I wasn't like really pushed into it or like pushed into super organized uh, things early sort of has allowed me to continue to be excited about learning more and just that process was always fun for me. I wasn't overloaded with optimal training or information at too early of an age. And so I try to avoid doing that to the kids that I work with as well, if I can, but I don't know, that's a different thing.
Yeah, well, I was even thinking about it when you said like how we didn't really have a structured weight program at Iowa City West, and I'm like, really? Like you guys are a
No,
big
and
program?
I guess I shouldn't say that because I would hate to like offend whoever was.
No, but
And
what I
it's a
was saying,
different beast, like when I was at Regina and it's a small school and you can like have groups of like 18 kids, you can get a lot done. You're at Iowa City West High. I mean, when I went to organized lifting, there was probably like 150 fucking kids there. Like, what do? You do what they do. Like they get everybody in line, jump over some hurdles, do some ab work, and then go in the weight room and try not to let anybody kill themselves, right? It wasn't that it was I shouldn't say that I don't mean to like talk bad of
mm,
what we had going. I think it's changed a lot. Like I think things are probably better now than they used to be in terms of just structure. Um, but wrestling season, we'd go in there with Mark, and I would say I'm gonna do some football stuff. He'd be like, whatever, and I would just like see how much I could bench and do some curl. It's just like, um, and so I guess maybe I was just given a lot of freedom Um, and I actually kind of think that maybe that was a good thing in terms of, long term, because I'm probably going to be doing this stuff the rest of my life. And so I don't mean to say that any part of it was like negative.
Mhm.
I loved it all. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess it's hard for me because now I'm like, when I become a professional, whatever, high school strength coach, and maybe part of it is just stroking my own ego. They're like, "Oh, well, we didn't have what I'm giving these people." I don't know, and I honestly don't. I honestly barely remember. So, um, but I do know that when I went to college, I did not know how to do a hang clean, right, and that I did not know how to do a squat. So, like, that seems like maybe if we had, uh, a measurable amount of structure, those things probably should have been taught to me. I don't know though.
Yeah. I guess what I was saying, like when you first said that, that's what I thought. But then I had to take a step back and go, dude, this was like the late 90s, early 2000s,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
there wasn't a lot of this information out there like that. I mean, I think like it just goes to show how much weightlifting and strength and conditioning has evolved in the last 25 years, like
And, and it,
it's so much.
and it's
So
not
not to
necessarily.
knock Iowa City West, but just show that we are different right now.
It's also this like constant, like, and this is more just an observation, I think, for me, but there's a constant series of overcorrections. And,
Ah,
you know, the big thing in the late 90s, if you remember, was bigger, stronger, faster, which was this program that, and it's actually brilliant. Like that's the thing is that, but people started calling it bigger, faster, or bigger, slower, bigger, stronger, slower is what they started calling it. Essentially, what it was a template that coaches could use and a way to implement the setting personal records basically as part of like your weightlifting routine. It was a solid weightlifting program.
hmm
So if you wanted to get stronger, bigger, stronger, faster would get you stronger. But because it was so popular and because it turned into this overcorrection of like, now we have a bunch of PT guys who think that getting stronger is much lower on the hierarchy of goals than it actually should be. And it turns into a bunch of PT. So they send some guy over and he has you do a bunch of bird dogs and pull off presses and there is no setting of records. There's no real heavy weightlifting. Um, and so that pendulum swings. Well, I remember because I graduated in '05, and I remember looking back at like when West High was really good at football, it was like 95 to 99. And it
hmm
just looked like overall they just had bigger, stronger kids. Like they looked like they really were lifting heavy weight. And we didn't have those kids. And whoever they were sending over to our school from performance therapies or whatever, um, that didn't seem to be one of their goals was for us to get stronger and to set a bunch of weightlifting records. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that is in a way sort of like the beginning of this overcorrection the other direction. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
hmm
Where it used to be, and when I was at Regina, people I would think considered me very old school in my approach. We like one of the first things I did was let everybody max out their bench, and none of the kids at the school could bench 300 pounds. And I thought to myself, I, I think that this is, I think it's kind of sad to not even have one kid at the school that can bench three. The highest bench when I first got there was 235. I'll never forget it. A kid did 235, and so I said, if nothing else, twice a week we're running West Side Barbell and we're going to get your bench press up. And I told these guys at the end of the year, anyone that benches 300 pounds, I'm going to make a big poster and we're going to put it up on the wall. It's going to be a 300-pound bench club. Because there's an old sub shop in Iowa City. It was called Hungry Hobo. And back in the day, Iowa,
Yeah.
yeah, Iowa football used to have like a 400-pound bench club, and they would have posters of and they're massive dudes, right? And then people say, "Oh, that's when they were taking steroids or whatever." Like, okay, but I always wanted to be on that poster, so we implemented that at Regina. The first year that we did it, we had 3 kids that got to 300 pounds.
Nice.
My last year, which was like 8 years later, we had 14 kids on that poster, chains around their neck and whatever else. And look, that's not like and the argument that the coaches now will say is bench press is a terrible performance metric. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But if you're going to line up in a 1A football game, and I'm going to tell you that 14 of my kids bench 300 pounds and none of yours do, and that's the only information that you have,
Yeah.
I would still like be fairly confident in making a bet that that team's going to, you know what I mean? Like it is a
Mhm.
metric. Like it's not, it's
Right.
definitely measuring something. And so I've always, I think that like the current state of things is better than it was probably in the early
Hmm.
2000s, but it's this kind of pendulum that swings from, old school common sense is what I call it, which is like that used to guide, I think, a lot of programming in general is just like old school common sense. And the
Right.
best coaches have sort of the best eye for what they need to do. And then the pendulum shifts into this just bombardment of information where you're like, learning how to train every muscle in the body and every plane of motion, and like you end up not getting good at anything.
Hmm.
And so I try to be aware of that, and I think that's something that all of us can think of, like when we were in high school or whatever, where that pendulum was. But and I don't even remember where that rant started, but it's always just been interesting stuff for me.
Yeah. Basically, it started by like how everything's evolved over the last 25 years. And part of that is also like everyone's trying to find the next best thing or
Yeah,
to copy, like, okay, this team looks really strong or this team looks like this. So what are they doing? And you
right.
try to mirror that. And like you're saying, there's just all this information out there and trying to weed through the bullshit essentially
And
with
it's
that
hard
common
for me,
sense, you
it's
know?
hard for me, like the triggering thing for me with what I'm doing right now with the landmine thing is that like I know that I am trying to sell the next best thing. Um, but the perception I think is that I don't like the old stuff or that, this is like supposed to be some dogmatic approach where you stop doing everything that's worked for 100 years, and I'm really not that guy. Um, but I just think that there's like some things that we can do that are pretty easy to include, and that they don't need to replace what has been proven to work, but they can work the same way in just a couple different patterns and positions. So that's like how I try to sit with it. And the other thing I think that swings is the serenity of like really good coaches in that, at the end of the day, most of the time you can take a kid from a B minus to a B plus, but he's never going to be an A. And the kid that is an A minus might never work out at all. And maybe he does and buys into it, and you can turn him into an A or an A plus or whatever. But a lot of the stuff is predetermined, and strength coaches can only do so much. So like that also I think has I like the direction that's going right now, where I see more and more coaches that have serenity enough to know that we're gonna do everything we can to help you perform a little bit better. But ultimately, your work in your sport is more important. And
Mhm.
you know, it's it's like it really takes the pressure off as a strength coach when you acknowledge the fact that this is a really small piece of this puzzle. And when
Mhm.
you know that, it lets you just do the best things. Like I'm just going to do things that I know work, and I'm not going to try to sprinkle some magic dust on there because it's probably not going to work anyway. And so yeah, I that's like part of the philosophy that I like the direction that's moving, and yeah, for whatever that's worth. Even though sometimes, that direction means feeling like you don't need to learn Landmine University, which you do, right? But no,
Right.
it's yeah, so there's just like that constant like balance for me, inner struggle. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think you said that at the beginning that like you are using old school techniques, but you're trying to marry them with like kind of new thoughts and improvements. Like you were talking about the whole trying to keep your spine, centered like and
Right.
tense, and you're not trying to move it. That was kind of one of the old school techniques that you're like, maybe we should change that a little bit, but still kind of keep some of the other old school stuff. So I think you explained it pretty well that you're a
Oh, thank
marriage of
you.
both.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's really something that I think is like uh really appealing to, and it's so you see like there's just certain sports, wrestling, baseball is another one where there's just like this oftentimes disdain for traditional weightlifting. Like and it's understandable because when you if you go to any local high school and you go to the weight room and watch a non-wrestler group, say it's football or basketball, and you watch them doing their squats, cleans, whatever. You'll see a bunch of skinny kids. Maybe some of them move well, jump high, run fast, whatever. In no universe are those kids as strong as the wrestling team. And oftentimes the wrestling team has the least structured strength and conditioning program. I say the same thing about like gymnasts. Does a gymnast need a strength coach? Because they're clearly stronger for their body than like
Right.
every other sport. So does the field hockey strength and conditioning coach have a like does them coming and working with the gymnastics team for an hour move the needle? And I think that inherently the gymnast says no. The wrestler says no. And so what ends up happening, and this is something that you see like at the university, they just recently, within the last 5 years, hired a certified strength coach. It always used to be Joe Williams or like a former wrestler that was done competing and that was now the strength guy, but was also drilling in the room and they're doing the same workouts in the weight room that like, and ultimately it's like they swing dumbbells up and do curls and it's about working hard, right? It's about, um, and the fact that they're constantly expressing strength the entire wrestling practice, like it turns into this there's almost a disdain to where like you please don't send some guy who's never wrestled in here. I don't care how much he knows about strength and conditioning. I this isn't us. This is a different thing.
Hmm.
Baseball players I think feel similar because they know the patterns that they're like trying to improve and they're all
Hmm.
super rotational and unilateral. They want
Yeah.
to swing the bat harder and throw the ball harder and
Hmm.
a bench, a squat, a deadlift. There's no way to like and coaches do like they'll come in there and they'll try to sell Olympic weightlifting to the softball team. And like they'll have a whole PowerPoint that explains how important it is to be able to accelerate and decelerate and triple and they'll talk about everything besides the actual pattern, which is constant neutral. And it's become pretty easy for me to come in and say, okay, you're a baseball player. You know that feeling when it comes through your lat and you rotate?
Hmm.
I think that that pattern should also be part of your weightlifting routine. And, here's a simple way to do that. And wrestling, very similar. I think that and I'm not a huge sports specific guy. Like, it's not that I want to go in there and just copy wrestling moves with a weighted vest. Like that's you practice your wrestling moves at wrestling practice. That's I sometimes people I think go a little overboard with trying to make things sport specific.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as I teach them these movements, I can draw parallels to what it feels like to hit a slide by or to use one side to pull and as you to push the other side through.
Hmm.
And it's just like there's constant connections and dots being, and one of the things that for me is just like the best is that a lot of the people that seek me out to learn this stuff and like RBY, who I just had a conversation with, it's because the same reason why he's a great athlete. He can see it and he can say, oh, okay, that's something that I should be doing because I could see how that's going to transfer. Uh,
Yeah.
and if you take that along with the attitude that like there's only so much transfer that you're ever going to get, but let's try to do the best possible movements. And so yeah, I'm lucky in that sense. at the same time, where I would really love to see it blow up is in the college football weight room. But that is such an old boys club, and it's like the opposite side of that spectrum.
Yeah.
That it's like that has been my great white buffalo. It's hard for me to get into a that world because that is the world with the most structured education system. And I am saying that some of the things that they have been taught are wrong or suboptimal. And it's kind of hard to break into there. And so the combat sports, um, things like baseball tend to be much easier conversations for me to have because they have this strange disdain for traditional weightlifting. And I think that's understandable. I think also like when you see if we use any method as like the gold standard, and if powerlifting is your gold standard, then you should look at the best powerlifters in the world and ask yourself if that's how you want your athletes to move. And
Mhm.
ultimately, the best powerlifters in the world tend to waddle around a little bit and like maybe lose the capacity to throw and run and jump and cut.
Mhm.
And that's not because they're powerlifting. And I know that, right? If they had continued to run and jump and cut, they could do all those things together. And I use powerlifting in my program, but just seeing that, seeing what the big weightlifter guy looks like, that's not part of the goal for a lot of athletes. Combat
Right.
sports, baseball players, rotational sports, that tends to be the most obvious like examples. And so that's where I've had probably the most success. Um, but I see the benefit for the football guys, and
Yeah.
so that's part of like my little mission is trying to see it get a little more popular in that world.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, right. No, it is what it is.
Yeah. So then how did wrestling come into all this into your life? You know, like we've talked a
Sure.
lot about you doing football and
Yeah,
weightlifting and everything, but
you know,
like obviously you
yeah,
wrestled a little bit, you know?
I did. I was pretty good, I like to think. So my dad, who's not super into sports, but
Oh, really?
yeah, he was a little bit into wrestling.
Yeah.
And when I was a youngster, he ran the youth program at Regina, and he did coach wrestling in
Wow.
college, and he coached at Regina. He coached a couple state champs. Um, he was always big on telling me, and I took his advice when I was a head wrestling coach, that anyone can be a head wrestling coach in Iowa City if you just do your diligence and find one of these incredible former wrestlers that's in town that just graduated and let them run practice, right? And just your job is to answer the parent questions or
Mhm.
whatever. So, and that was always kind of his philosophy, I think, when he coached high school wrestling. And I think that is the truth that, like, if you don't have really good people in your room in Iowa City, then you haven't looked for them because they're out here and, like, there's a lot of guys who would love to come in and run your practice. But he ran the youth program when I was a little guy. And it was, honestly, some of my best memories, just I think because it was time that I got to spend with my dad. We'd go and roll the mats out together and put them away together. It was just once a week, Saturday morning for like 3 months of the year. But that was like my first exposure to wrestling. We played a lot of games. He was really good about just, and I'm trying to take that philosophy, with my kids. Just, I was sad when it was over. I did one tournament every year. It was the Regina tournament when I was a little kid. And, I was a big kid, so I would usually get my trophy and then they'd make me bump up and get beat up by some kid that was older because there was no one for me to wrestle that was actually my age. But I loved it. I liked it. But then, junior high came. I also loved basketball. And when
Oh
I was in eighth grade, I was, 6'4", 180, and I was like,
my gosh, really?
yeah, and I was this tall, skinny kid, and I was good at basketball. I could dunk a basketball in eighth grade. So it was like, this is I want to be Shaq. And this is also now, I also grew up in the time of Michael Jordan, which was
Right.
he was the most famous human being on the planet, and everyone wanted to be Michael Jordan. So I loved basketball, and I played basketball in junior high and was really into it. The summer after eighth grade, I spent that whole summer playing basketball. I was moved up to the sophomore team. So I was really
Wow.
excited because I was going to be on the sophomore team as a freshman, and that was like a big deal for me. And West High is a great basketball program as well. Um, and right at the end of my ninth grade football season, there was like real conversation had with me and Coach Ryland, who was my seventh grade football coach, and was like really awesome guy to me. And he talked me kind of into it a little. I'd say talked me into it a little. I mean, the big sell for me was that if you want to be good at football, you should go out for wrestling. If you want to play football for Iowa, you should first look at your skin color and then second, look at the guys that are on the team because there's a bunch of white former wrestlers on that football team. And there aren't a lot of, you know, basketball. And I was, and also the realization that like, dude, you're done growing. Okay. Like you're not going to be 7'2". When you're the tallest kid in sixth grade, you think, man, I might be like 7 feet tall when this is over with, right? I'm a head taller than all these kids. But it was that for me, it really came down to, like I said, I had this like single dream of being on that football field, and they rightly so sold me on the idea that if I want to do that, this is the sport for me. So ninth, and I did both in junior high, of course.
Hmm.
And then in ninth grade, I went out for wrestling, and I was like 6'4", 190 pounds, 195. I wrestled 215, and had success with the kids that were my age. Um, the guy that was ahead of me, varsity, Greg Coleman was his name. Um, Rest in peace, good friend. He actually passed last year, but he was a great football player as well. He played at Iowa State. He got caught drinking, and the spot opened up, and all of a sudden, I was thrust into the varsity lineup, which was like really exciting for me. Big, I'm going to be
Yeah.
varsity for this dual tournament, the Lepic Duels in Iowa City. Just so happened that the 215 field at that tournament was all ranked kids. I got pinned every single match in front of a bunch of people, and I will never forget it. And I think that like a lot of wrestlers maybe have a story like this, but you have to hate losing more than you like winning. That was the most humiliating weekend of my life. Like I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. And I made a decision that if I'm gonna do this, I'm not going out there in my spandex and losing to, I'm not gonna lose anymore. This is so hard to lose this sport. Like it really is, especially if your entire identity is the big tough guy, right? Like that's why it's so great. But that spring, and this is what Coach Ryan was so great about. He just took me to like every freestyle tournament that there was, and we practiced freestyle and Greco, 3 times a week. And I I really enjoyed like the low stakes of that, I think as well. It really like that now we could go to these tournaments and I don't know anyone in the gym and this is awesome. Like I could tell everybody I won. No one even knows. Like it was that season for me was the one. And I think a lot of wrestling guys can probably point to that one year where they like I even talked to some of my kids like the Whitmer kid, Asher Whitmer, Jesse's boy, I work with every morning, and like he's an awesome kid. I love having these conversations with him. But he talks about losing a tournament when he was like 7 and how he really started taking it serious after that. And I'm like, oh, that's so funny. But he has that like sort of memory of when it didn't go so well, and he decided like he wasn't gonna let that happen again. Uh,
Hmm.
and so then my sophomore year, I think I got fourth or fifth at state. I was again not, I was like 205 pounds. But I had a good year that year.
Why
And
don't you cut down to 89 at all? Did you ever think about
so
that?
Greg was 89 at that time. So my sophomore year,
Oh, God.
we were pretty neck and neck. Um, I didn't want to cut because I was on my way to being Um, I wanted to be a 300-pound football player. And also I had like legitimate muscle dysmorphia, and that when I looked myself in the mirror, I just thought that I was so skinny. And I
Mm.
still have that issue. And on top of that, I think part of it, and I don't really remember making the decision, but part of it too was that like it was an easier weight class. I mean, the I could really compete my sophomore year at 215, And if I had cut down to 189, I'm not saying I wouldn't have been able to compete, but I think there's just better wrestlers at that weight. You know, I don't think that I didn't feel like cutting to 189 would necessarily result in a better season. And I was also trying to gain weight. Then my junior year, I came out of football season weighing like 255. And we had my classmate
Wow.
Travis Mead, was my classmate at the time, and he was a heavyweight. He was like 265. And actually coming into my junior year, uh, well, not my junior year. So coming into my junior year, we were kind of making this decision. Like we both felt like we could maybe win state at heavyweight or 215. I decided to make that cut. So I cut from
Wow.
255 to 215 my junior year. And
Wow.
that's sounds like a lot of weight, but when you're like a big guy who's constantly stuffing his face, it's not, it wasn't necessarily like, it wasn't like a super impressive cut, but,
I
but
mean,
it
still
was a
40
substantial
pounds is
cut.
40 pounds though, you
Yeah.
know?
And I do remember like junior year. And so I won state that year. And like, um, they had night before weigh-ins, which I was like so excited about for the championship.
Of
So if you
course.
make it to the championship, you get the night before weigh-in. And then actually like when I won that year, the right before my match, I just jumped on the scale and I was like 236. And the guy that I was wrestling was a 205 pound, guy that was one of these not cutting any weight. And I threw him and pinned him in the first period and just felt way bigger than him. But then my senior year, uh, coming in, and Trav got fourth that year at heavyweight. Coming into my senior year, they actually had me and him ranked 1 and 2 at heavyweight. So we were both at heavyweight on the same team. And that was like the most fun year. I mean, for me, but then I
Really?
got injured. So my senior year,
Oh,
I had beat four of the top 10 guys. I hadn't been out of the first period. I mean, I was like 265 jacked and just like,
yeah.
this was so easy for me, and I had Travis in the room. I had like the second best kid was my partner. Like he was better than these kids, which is such a great. And I was at West High, so like they'd bring in Matt Fields to work out with us, and John Osendorf, Big O would come roll with me, and I had all these incredible partners. Um,
Mhm.
and then I over Christmas break, my shoulder popped, and instead of my rotator cuff tearing, it tore off a piece of bone from my shoulder. And so they had to go and scope it and like staple everything, and I was done. I couldn't wrestle,
Wow.
which was really tough. Trav, who was my backup at the time, won state. So that was like the silver lining there, that we both got our state championship. And like it was I mean it's fuck sucked for me, but like it was it's now it's cool because we can look back and talk about it. But so yeah, so that was like my basically wrestling career. I did the freestyle. I won field cadet, I think, 1 year for Greco. That was probably the highest like national tournament that I won. I wrestled some really good kids in that stuff. Fields and that Dustin Fox, and like there were some really good guys that I would run into a lot. And I just I always I also, to be totally honest, like my favorite thing was when wrestling season was over. I mean, it wasn't like it was hard, and I love that and appreciate that now. But at the time, I never considered myself a wrestler,
Yeah.
but my God, I wouldn't trade any of it. Now I consider that one of the like, I mean, I played football at Iowa. I played my true freshman year or whatever. But like if I want to impress somebody with an I was a Gatorade player of the year in high school, whatever. If I want to
Yeah.
impress somebody with an accolade though, winning state in high school wrestling is still that is like the height of my athletic achievement. And I can appreciate that now. Because that means something to people that, oh, you won state in Iowa. That's like, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? It is really cool. And I am really proud of that because like they're just the hardest working guys. And I'm all forever indebted to the sport, and just love it. But
Yeah.
it's my another rant. But that's That's my wrestling history, if you will. And like in terms of what I actually was like as a wrestler, my junior high coach, a guy named Pablo Ubasa, who
Here's your junior high coach?
he was a junior high coach at Northwest Junior High, and he ended up
Wow.
losing that job. I know, crazy, because he's like, and he coached so, and he's that was another thing. I will give Pablo, if he's listening to this, some hardcore props because what he did with me in eighth grade was he taught me how to just bang underhooks and go for the bear hug. And I'm serious, Kelby, that's all I did. I bear hugged my way through state. I never hit a knee. I never took a shot. He taught me, a good Russian tie, a good arm drag, and what to do
Mhm.
with an underhook. He said, "Listen, you're going to be a head taller than everyone you wrestle. They're either going to be fat or they're going to be taller, or they're going to be your height, but they're not going to be as strong as you." And so, and looking back, like, and Mark was always trying to, he's like, man, you got the best high crotch. Like, you can tech everyone if you just shot high crotches on these fat kids, right? But I really took to the upper body stuff. And I credit Pablo for that, sort of just like it changed the entire sport for me because I felt like I needed to, as soon as I realized that like I could just be really aggressive hand fighting and learn how to, be a Greco guy it, at an upper weight class, that was all I needed. And so that was my style. And that was like, I never took a shot. I never picked it down. I never picked it down either. And that was like a thing that I argued with Ryland the entire year. But my junior and senior year, I started bottom referee's position 0 times. And I also didn't get taken down. So I picked neutral every single time. And I just charged underhooks. Like that was all I did. So, and yeah, man, looking back, it's like, yeah, I've just been really lucky. I was really lucky. Think about the towns that I could have been born into and like just probably never reached a high level in that sport. I was really lucky to be in Iowa City and have the right, few people take an interest in me and help me figure this stuff out. So, but yeah, I think I had Pablo for the 2 years that he was an actual junior high coach, and then of course
Wow.
he's still doing his thing and has like a fingerprint on so many incredible guys who
Yeah.
aren't all digging underhooks, right? Like this is him looking at a tall, skinny junior high kid and saying, "Hey," it was just like a very
Yeah.
Mr. Miyagi type of thing. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
how did you almost go to Regina, or why didn't you go to Regina with the
yeah.
ties
So
there?
I went to Regina for grade school.
Okay.
It's and then I have a brother who's 2 years older,
Hmm.
and he went to Regina up through eighth grade. So I was at the end of sixth grade, he was at the end of eighth grade, and he wanted to go to the big school for much different reasons than me. He was an incredible athlete and also incredible wrestler, smaller than me, much different body type, but and without going too much into like his personal information, he really loved um, a couple different things, speech and debate, theater, like things that he like really wanted to try. And
Hmm.
at Regina, he was sort of pigeonholed into the running back, the track guy, the wrestling guy. That was part of his like decision. And
Hmm.
as soon as my parents said that he was going to go to West High, I said, why don't I get to go to the big school? Because I want to go to the big school because I think that that's going to, again, get me to Iowa football. So
Hmm.
I went in seventh grade to Northwest, and we both made the switch at the same time. Um,
Gotcha.
and then I ended up back, working at Regina for
Right.
8 years, and I love Regina. And it's just like and now I'm thinking about sending my kid there for preschool. Like I really do love it. But yeah, that's kind of how that happened.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. When you hurt your shoulder your senior year, did you like that? Did you kind of spiral in a way of like, man, now what about my football career? Like this, that could have impacted a lot of things, you know?
Yeah. So it was, yes. I mean, that's like a really hard time for me. Just like relatively speaking.
Mhm.
you're also 17,
Right.
and I I never I felt I didn't feel like it was going to hold me back long term.
Hmm.
It was mostly just frustrating that I wouldn't be able to wrestle. Um, but it was definitely like a really hard and I talk about how awesome it was to like sit and watch Travis win state, but honestly at the time I think that almost made it worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
totally.
like um but it was a really good lesson for me because then I ran into the same thing in college. I think it's really hard when you um and this is something that athletes do, I think, also by necessity, making it such a big part of your identity.
Right.
Because you can't be good if you don't, right? If that's not you and the way that, like, if that's not one of the first, if wrestler isn't one of the first five words that describes you, then you're probably not very good or you're not gonna be, right? So,
Right.
but to have that identity stripped, prematurely is like super difficult. It's lessons that I've tried to not lose sight of, especially when like you're working with kids and like a performance, because this is like coming for all of them. That like at some point they won't be a wrestler anymore. Um, and I had good people that helped me navigate through that. But I'm sure you can relate. There wasn't like a subject in school that I was like, there wasn't like something else. So it was hard. It was really hard. And one thing that I did do was like do as much training as I could. This was my good arm, so I like learned how to do one-handed push-ups and one-handed handstands with my bad arm. And one of the things I said I could do was like work my grip. My dad took me to NCAA's that year, and this is a funny story, but we went down to like there were these booths set up, like some meet and greet stuff, and Dan Hodge was down there, and he was selling like a book, but he was like he's probably passed now, but
Yes.
yeah, he was like hand whittling uh like Christmas figurines. It was very strange. Like he was But he talked to me for like an hour, and it was one of the my dad had like given me books. Like I knew this. I was like a fan of this guy. He was like the first wrestler ever on Sports Illustrated, and I had that
Yeah.
in my room, And he taught me a couple of his favorite grip exercises because that was like his favorite, or that's like what he was known for. He could break pliers and he could smash an apple, and like he had this legendary grip. And he used to have me do this. Well, he didn't used to. I mean, he told me about this thing that I could do because I was in a sling at the time or whatever. And he would grab one corner of the newspaper and he would crumple it with one hand until he could get it all the way in the ball. And then he'd grab the next page. And I started doing that every day. And like, I still do some of these
Hmm.
kind of cool grip things that I don't know. But for me, that was like another thing was that like, training was something that like I could still do. I could still find ways to do it. And thank God, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that's not that way for everybody. If I had like broken my neck and gotten paralyzed, I honestly don't know what I would have done. So I kept training through it. And I also gained an appreciation for training's sake, just as like a mental health vehicle, like that you can't go to wrestling practice, but you can do something that makes you feel like you're getting a little stronger. So
Yeah.
but yeah, man, dude, it's no way to not to. It was tough. It was really hard. That was not fun. And that same thing is going to happen to numerous kids this year. And I just like uh, my heart goes out to them. But I also confidently could say that if they can get through that they can get through a lot of things that are going to happen in life that are going to be similarly disruptive. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't regret any of it. But if I could go back in time, I'd skip practice that day.
Yeah. Um, you were a part of one of the top recruiting classes, like, gosh, that Iowa has had in recent memory. I mean, that class was stacked nationally.
Yeah, it
Did
was.
you
It was. It didn't pan
realize?
out. It didn't pan out. which is also,
Maybe not quite, but
yeah, some really incredible guys. And they're,
incredible.
yeah. And, my best friend and roommate, when I was playing was Pat Anger from Bettendorf.
Yeah.
He was like the last one, man. I mean, he was like an afterthought, and he had probably, one of the most successful careers out of all of us. Um, but there was Ryan Bain, who was also a state champ from Illinois. And that was fun to have, a couple wrestling guys, Tony Moyaki, Dace Richardson, a couple guys like a guy named Dan Doring, who didn't end up maybe having the career that he wanted, but was just hugely touted out of high school. All these guys were in the Army game, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what I remember most about that was that it was just a really exciting time to be
Yeah.
18 years old and in Iowa City. Um, but I was the first one in that class, and I was not like, I mean, if you weren't local, you probably didn't know, who I was at that time, but it was, as all that happened, it was cool. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you play both fullback and linebacker at Iowa City West? Because being a 3A school, or maybe at the time, maybe football, they were 4A or 5A. I forgot. But
It
I
was
mean, that's
fun.
pretty impressive to be on both sides of the ball at that size of a school. Normally, you only play one side.
Yeah, I mean, my memory is foggy, but I do wonder if I might not have been able to do one of them a little bit better had I had more breaks. I mean, those were like super exhausting games. I do know that. My senior year, we beat City High for the boot. It was a big deal. They were ranked like third or something, and I had 38 carries that game, so I ran the ball
Oh my
38
God.
times, and I also played defense and every special team as well. Like I was running down on kick. I
Oh
think
my
I think
gosh.
back at on it, and it's just like I don't know. I don't know if it was just like different back then too. I think we played a slower game. I played fullback, ran right up the middle. It was more like rugby than what you see now. It was just like scrum after scrum. But and I played linebacker. I moved around a lot on defense. They put me at nose guard. They put me at DN. They moved me around, and you know, it was, I just remember it being really tiring.
I bet, man. I can't imagine playing all those snaps, getting the ball 32. I mean, I know guys in at the smaller schools do it, but
Well,
oof.
it's like, I do think it's all relative. Like those guys at the smaller schools that do that, those are hard-nosed dudes, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not inherently easier if you're like breaking off big runs every third, you know what I mean? Like that
Yeah,
might be harder. I don't know, but it's such an intense sport. I think that ultimately the way that it's moved, the direction it's moved, is just not designed to be played that way anymore.
yeah.
And you see less and less of it. So, I had a chance to work this last year with some alignment over at Liberty High School in North Liberty here.
Yep.
And Scott Chandler from Iowa is the head coach there now. And
Wow, really? Okay.
yeah, so very cool. But like to see the way that they do it, like no one's playing both ways anymore. So
Yeah.
it just I don't know. And there's also just like this thing where you feel like that was just a couple years ago. But it's like, no, that's like a different sport. It's archaic. That was
Yeah.
so long ago, I guess. So it's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's cool that he's back in town and he's
Yeah.
a lot of that. It seems like a lot of guys that graduate from Iowa, football, wrestling, whatever, they kind of somehow find their way back or they hang around for a while. Like,
It's a pretty great place, I think, to raise kids. I mean, I'm biased and know no other place, but and I think, for me it's different because I grew up, like I said, a block from I grew up in the same neighborhood I'm in right now. So
oh,
uh,
really?
yeah, I mean, I can only speak to my own experience, but
Mhm.
um, it makes you feel good when guys come back, and I think there is
Yeah.
like a special kind of community support, and just like a lot of that comes from the top too, that like I mean, gosh, there's only been two football coaches at Iowa my entire life. Um, Hayden Fry and Kirk Fry. Like, there's no other school that has that. And because he's so respected and because he has just always conducted himself so well, um, I think that that trickles down and influences the way that you're treated in the community. I mean, if I tell people that I played football at Iowa, their head, I think, goes right to how awesome of a guy Coach Ferentz is and how Iowa football means that, right? That like you have this respect and support from the community, and a lot of that is because of I think just the way that he's run that program. I can't say enough good things about him. So um, I think that that's like a big part of it. I think that's a bigger part of it than someone might like inherently
Mhm.
appreciate. But he sort of, yeah, created this experience. And Scott played in the NFL for 9 years as well, and he grew up
Yeah,
in Texas. And like, there's a, to be a, you'd rather be a head football coach in Texas, right? But
yeah,
it's cool to see, like you said, people come back, and I always love it. I'm after this, I'm going to meet with Mike Humple, who's in town, who played linebacker for the Iowa, was a two-time state champ wrestler as well, and yeah, it's just cool to have those guys in town because I kind of maybe always knew I would be in town, but I didn't know that all those guys would still be in town. So it's definitely cool. And the wrestling I
yeah,
think, as well. It's like, and man, that's another thing that I think comes from the top. It comes from what Coach Ryland had, but in terms of Iowa City West, the culture is still so strong that when I pop over there for a meet, I inevitably will run into. I mean, Nate Moore's coaching, of course, but
right.
like I'll run into four other guys that I wrestled with in high school, and it's just like if you create a really positive experience for kids and in a formative time, then I think like whether they realize it or not, they have this urge to give back, to give something back to that, and I see that both with just Iowa football and Iowa City West wrestling, which to me are kind of the two my two clubs that I'm the most proud of having been a part of. So it's
Yeah.
definitely fun.
Yeah, and you're working with somebody who's giving back to the community in another way, like Dylan Carew,
Oh, I mean, he's example A. He's exhibit A, right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, we all got something from coach. And I think like when you really do, when you get something from, that means something, or you feel like someone had a real positive impact on you, it just like, I don't know, uh, it's a different measuring stick in terms of like how rewarding it can be.
Yeah.
And, Dylan, man, really like cannot say enough about him, but how lucky we are to have him just in the area. And,
Yeah.
you know, and also, he went to similar to me, like our college careers didn't pan out the way that we thought that they would. Um, Different things don't pan out the way that you think they're going to, but it doesn't take away from all the good that has come from that sport. And it's man, it's interesting. It's like even you see like a guy like Siebold, who didn't rest ended up not wrestling in college, but you know, there's no way he wasn't going to be around it, right? Like it's just so it's just yeah, it's cool. And I feel really lucky to be a part of it. Like I said, like I sometimes reflect and think I just sort of was lucky to land in a couple of spots that like to meet some of these guys and to consider them friends. So you just hope you can hope you can put your own kids into like similar environments.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's part of it. It's part of why people come back because
Yeah.
they hope that their kid has the same experience, which they probably won't, but the
Yeah.
higher likelihood, right? Maybe.
Yeah. What was it like? I'll let you go here um, in a minute, but like, what was it like to realize your dream of playing football at the University of Iowa, running out as a true freshman with the recruiting class we just talked about that was top six in the country or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, it was insane. And you're playing
Yeah.
as a true freshman, your dream. I mean,
It was
wow.
awesome. It was awesome. It was awesome. And I think like it's one of those things that there's a lot of layers to it. For me in particular, because and it's really, comparison is the thief of joy. Like at the end of the day, it that is a bubble that popped for me. So that's one thing. That it's I think I tried to think back to what that felt like and how amazing that was, and it was so amazing. And then to be a senior and not be on the team anymore, and to see the guys go out for senior, then there's like that, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, ultimately, um, I think where I'm really lucky is that I learned that you can accomplish something if you obsess about it, because that's was my life, was just like obsessing about this, and somehow I made it happen. Um, and then I also think, the thing that I consider lucky is that like some people never uh, get into opportunities where they have those type of stakes, where it really feels like this is life or death, and it's not, right? And some people have legitimate high stake, adventures and things of that nature. But I feel really lucky that I got to, um, A, accomplish a goal, and
Yeah.
B, fail, right? So, um, both things, and it's one of the, like, wrestling is such a great microcap. People know that the reason that they want their kid to wrestle, or they say the reason they want their kid to wrestle, is to learn lessons like that. And, the only lessons that stick are the ones that burn, and then when you get those high stakes. So I try to be grateful for that as well. Things not panning out the way that I thought they would is to me equally as valuable as how exciting that was. But at the end of the day, dude, like if I could just relive one thing, man, I'll tell you though, it's such an interesting thing. I have this hierarchy of memories of like when I really felt like awesome,
Mhm.
like I just felt like a superhero. That state wrestling championship is up there, man. That's up there in the barn, just getting that medal or like winning that match. And then also up there is that first time out the swarm. It was like I had goosebumps to the point where I wasn't sure I was going to be able to play. I thought I might just have to go up to coach and be like, dude, I'm too fired up. I can't, like, I'm going to blow an assignment, like this is too much, but this is like overwhelmingly beautiful. Um, so yeah, it was amazing. But I also think, the bad parts were equally as amazing in terms of like my development as like a human. So, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, so what's next for you? You got this landmine university, you're kind of helping out with big game and you pop into Iowa City West. Like what do you have a long-term idea of what Alex Kanellis is up to next?
that's a great question. That's something I should think about. No, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. The the landmine stuff has been. Um, I just feel really lucky because I am able to uh, make a living doing something that I'm really into. I'm continuing to try to grow that. I have master coaches in different spots now. So there's a coach in Korea, Japan,
Wow.
Czech Republic. I go to Germany in May. It's allowed me to travel. I want to keep doing that for sure. And then, the big chapter two for me was when my son was born. And I really want to do that as well as I can, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And right now, I think for me, the big thing that I'm trying to be good at is the work-life balance, and just trying to really set my hierarchy of goals that I'd like to spend as much time with the boys as I can. Um, and try to put that above making as much money as I can, because that sometimes can be hard,
Yeah.
for me to do in my brain. But um, I think that like in terms of short term, I'm just like constantly excited about that. So that's like a fun thing for me. But I think I'll be in Iowa City for the foreseeable future, and I think I'll be trying to sell this landmine stuff for the foreseeable future. And you know, I'm not real itchy right now about the next thing, so we'll see.
Good. Yeah.
I think that's probably a good thing. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Let's do a quick plug for Landmine University. Where can you find it? Where can they find you? Like if people are interested, like how
sure,
do
yeah, and it's mostly, most of my stuff is aimed at coaches and trainers. It's a sort of a continued education platform. That's not to say that someone who's really personal about or intense about their own personal training wouldn't love it as well. But Instagram is a great place to just go check out, everything that is free about it and learn, sort of what it's all about. And then if you want, you can go to landmineuniversity.com, and I've got certification that you can do virtually. And then I also have in-person classes. In 2 weeks, I go to San Diego for level one and level two certification class. And the other cool thing that we do there is something called the landmine game. So we actually compete in the clean and jerk and the snatch.
Yeah.
And so it's essentially just an Olympic weightlifting competition with rotational version with the landmine. So we have a lot of fun with that. That's coming up in a couple weeks. So if you happen to be listening to this and you're in San Diego looking for something to do in a couple weeks, that's like an awesome weekend. So, but yeah, check out the Instagram. It's fun. I try to be pretty active on there and throw something out every day that will either make coaches think or just give you something new to try. So that's kind of a fun platform to check it out.